All right, what I learned from my very first 2 HYROX races. So I completed my first 2 races last year in Sydney and Melbourne, and I was lucky enough to podium on them, and I've learned a lot from those races. There's a big season coming up. I'm off to Nice for the World Champs in my age division in June. So I've been training really hard for that one and actually keeping a close eye on the sport. But even from those first 2 races, I've actually learned a lot around the strategy, how to actually race it, and more importantly, how to train for these types of events. So my first race that I didn't have much prep, and I clocked in at 1:07. The second one I clocked in at 1:04. So I knocked off 3 minutes from one race to another, and they're only 2 weeks apart. I had a bit longer to prep for it, but more importantly, I was able to change my strategy for that one, and my current goal is to get sub 1 hour. So here are a couple of things that I learned. So I've changed my view on the race itself. When I first looked at this about 9-10 months ago, I really saw it as this overall event where you can kind of push the exercises quite a bit, get the runs in, push the exercises. But now I've realized that the runs are so important, and majority of your training should clearly go towards that, which I probably should have realized earlier, but it's primarily a running race under fatigued conditions. If you look at the top 15 guys, primarily they're runners. Yes, they're strong. Yes, they have the dynamics in terms of everything else that they can do, but they are all primarily runners. There's no one in that pack who's really strong on the exercises and a weak runner. It's just the nature of the sport itself. So that's my first takeaway, was primarily this is actually a running event with the exercise in there. Number 2 is probably the way you control your heart rate through this event is crucial. I went out too hot in the first event itself, and it goes for, let's say, an hour. It's too hard if your heart rate spikes to really bring that back down and start to really control the race. A lot of this now I'm gonna go by feel. So how I'm feeling led into things. How's my heart rate going, and making sure I'm actually keeping to something that I can sustain for a whole hour. Especially when it comes to some of those exercises that can seriously spike your heart rate. The sleds, the burpees. Hey buddy. The sleds, the burpees, these are ones where you can actually overshoot it too much, and again, you fatigue yourself for the run, and the runs aren't meant to be recovery. These are where you should be really packing on the pace and bringing those times down. Number 3 is when it comes to race day, my strategy was to kind of push everything at the same level. Now I think a better strategy is actually to push the runs quite hard and dial it back a little bit on the exercises, because the exertion you need to outpace those exercises are not going to make up for the run times that you can get. So if you go too hard on the sleds, for example, you'll lose too much time on the runs, and it'll take you too long to recover on the rest of the event itself. So when it comes to race day, you can train how you like. I would actually go a little bit harder at training on those ones, but when it comes to race day, pacing it and getting more breaks in and really trying to push the runs is a better way to do it. Number 4 is probably breaking up the sleds more than you're comfortable with. When I did my first one, I was doing 1 lap at a time and then just going straight into the next one. Whereas going a little bit faster and having these mini breaks help you kind of flush out some of the lactic, which actually will help you down the track as well. So breaking them up more than you think is a good strategy in this scenario. Number 5 is probably how to approach the ergs as well. So the ski's quite early on in the event, and the row is just over halfway in the event. With these ones, these are ones where you really need to get heart rate at a sustained level. So you want to feel comfortable in this, especially when it comes to the ski at the start. This is a comfortable pace, which is still quick, but getting a nice rhythm in there as well. You don't want to be going too hard on this one, because trying to go an extra 5-10 seconds faster will actually take a lot more energy out of you, and going that extra little pace is probably not worth the extra energy you give to, and you can make up that time in the run. When it comes to the row, you do want to get on there quickly as well, but this is probably a chance to get a bit of a breather, because you're back into a run after this one too. So you want to sit at a nice sustained pace with a low strokes a minute, probably lower than you feel comfortable with, especially in a race. I also learned from these events is that I've completely changed how I do my training. My training lead in the Worlds is a lot more volume. I completely underestimated the amount of running training I would need to do to get up to that top level. So I was probably doing 20-30 Ks a week. I now know the top guys are doing significantly more than that, 50K plus per week at quality, and a lot more interval work as well, because that is the nature of the event. So more road runs, more interval training to get that speed up, and more longer distance zone 2 running, because these are what's really going to get that engine working. And actually these help you in these stations itself, because you'll be able to go at a faster pace, get your breath back into those exercises themselves. The next one's also training itself, but trying to do the exercises under fatigue in training is actually a great way to condition yourself for the event. So for example, if you are doing exercises such as burpee broad jumps under fatigue, which is how you're going to do them on the event, it's really going to help you build up that engine too. So trying to almost work over capacity in training is really going to help you out when it comes to race day. Another thing that I really learned with this is the technique on all these exercises is absolutely critical. If you look at the way that a lot of the guys are doing the sleds, a lot of them actually have the arms wrapped around the sled. Some push, some swap, their technique as well. So finding out what's comfortable for you and finding out what works is really important. I think the change of how you grip it is good, but you also want to rest your arms too, which is why a lot of the guys don't actually use their hands there usually. A lot of them wrap their arms around, so it's just the push, and they can kind of relax their arms down there too. Another thing that I learned when I started doing a couple of these races is that the pacing on the runs with the top guys are almost consistent start to finish, which I found quite interesting, especially coming out of those exercises which are going to build up a little more lactic. Some of the top guys are holding nearly or within 5 seconds the same pace end to end, whereas my paces were undulating quite a bit. I was starting quite strong, after the sleds would slow down a little bit, and I was just trying to really find my balance there as well. So trying to get into a good running rhythm each and every lap, which is consistent, landing with a midfoot strike so it is that nice consistent 170, 180 beat pace, but more importantly so you can get your breath back on each of them, so you're keeping your chest up and getting that air and oxygen into your body. The next thing I learned is about race shoes. So I was actually racing in Kayano's, which are great running shoes, which I thought would be great. Fine on the grips, no dramas there, but they're a little bit heavier. Almost all the top guys are wearing really light shoes with good grip, and they're all running shoes. So there's different brands that people are wearing, so I've noticed a mix with those ones, but most of them have the carbon plate, which help propel you forward. It's a really good shoe that a lot of the top runners are wearing, and they're very, very light, which is great for things like burpee broad jumps, clearly for running, even for lunges itself. The key with the shoes though is you've got the grip for the sleds. So I have seen people that were slipping a little bit on those because they had grip which wasn't very good. So making sure you still have that one, then the rest is obviously gravy for you guys too. So what am I doing leading into Nice and beyond as well? I'm increasing the volume of my training. I think this will take a little while to get up to the speed of those top guys, so I'm hoping the season is one where I can really improve my times quite a lot, but the running is going to be my primary focus. Training under fatigue is, I think, really crucial. Technique is going to play a massive part. Proper race running shoes with good grip, which I think is going to really help, and having a proper race strategy, which is working on feeling rather than trying to work on pacing, is actually going to help you because, again, this thing goes for an hour. So if you redline at any point, you get to that point of your aerobic or anaerobic threshold, it's going to be very, very hard to come back for that, especially when it comes to things like lunges and wobbles. Thanks for watching, guys. Drop your tips in the comments down below. I'd actually love to hear them personally, but I'm sure if someone's watching this, they would love to as well. Good luck in the upcoming season or any races you're doing. It's a ton of fun, and I hope you guys hit some PBs and some fast times out there on the course.